From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show. It is Monday, the 27th of June in the year of our Lord 2016. I'm Kevin Wade, and I'm your regular co-host on Mondays. The other co-host that you are so familiar hearing is Rick Trader. He's taking a well-deserved day off, and I am very happy and pleased to be joined by none other than the patriot of the Hoosier State, J.D. Manier. J.D.?
Hey, great to be with you again, Kevin. I've gotten fortunate to do about 2 or 3 in a row with you, and I just really enjoy it.
Well, thank you, and I enjoy it too. You and I did a regular tour together here about a year and a half ago, and then schedules change as they do. And, well, it's just great to be back on the radio with you.
Oh, yeah. A lot going on, isn't there, today?
The world seems to be spinning faster and faster, J.D.
Supreme Court ruled in favor of abortion rights today. And I was disappointed when it broke. I actually was watching Fox News Live when it broke 5-3 in favor of abortion rights. What is amazing to me is that this even relates to, remember, it was Kermit Gosnell, the abortionist from Philadelphia, who did untold amounts of abortions. 2 people were killed because of his unsafe practices, and he's in jail right now. And that's why Texas wrote this law, and the Supreme Court shot it down. And unfortunately, the Texas law, which was good law, got copied by other states. And once again, it was Kennedy who was the deciding vote on that, and terribly disappointing to us who are pro-life.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a strike against health safety for women. There is always a life that is lost in the abortion. That's indisputable. And the precautions that were put in by the legislature and signed into law by the governor in Texas were to improve the chances of the mother surviving should things go in unexpected directions in Texas. And the Supreme Court stepped in and said that those prudent precautions somehow conflict with their reading of the U.S. Constitution. But that's the world we unfortunately live in today, and perhaps better days will be ahead.
Yeah, Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, a conservative, she's got a congressional committee investigating multiple abortion clinics, and they found evidence that HIPAA violations have been violated, and proof the facilities they're pressuring women into consenting to donate aborted baby parts. And so maybe the upshot is Congress can come to the rescue some on this, but it did disappoint us and it disappoints Kevin that we need Trump to appoint conservative justices to turn this around.
Yeah, frankly, I don't think it was an issue the Supreme Court should have picked up. There was a time when the Supreme Court, because of, well, basically their supreme position in the judiciary, would only touch cases that involve someone losing their life or losing their freedom. And they gave wide latitude, as they properly should, to the actions of states and state legislatures, because they trusted the people in any community to govern themselves. but we have had a very activist court for some decades now, and as a result, virtually every issue that has any national controversy associated with it gets brought before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, because they like to have a hand in things, I believe incorrectly, will pick it up and then make a ruling. But I think this was a case where it was simply up to the people of Texas, and if the people of Texas were not happy with the results, they could elect new legislators. J.D.?
You broke on me. I didn't catch the last phrase.
I said in times past, this would simply be considered by the court as a legislative matter up to the people in Texas. And if the people in Texas were not happy with the law, they would elect different legislators to rewrite that law. But now we have an activist court that wants to step in and put its thumbprint on every action across the country. And that's the definition of judicial tyranny, as I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's not Reagan's federalism at all. You're absolutely right. Hey, I want to point something else out. There was a couple years ago, there was a terrible flood in Nashville, Tennessee. And I started scratching my head because it was one of the worst, maybe the worst in the last century in Nashville, Tennessee. And the TVA, the locks, and the dams up there. And I asked and posed the question even then, hey, what's going on with the Army Corps of Engineers? Well, now we have this terrible, there's 26 deaths in West Virginia because of the flooding. And at one point, 7 inches of rain came down in 3 hours, which is horrendous. But, Kevin, I've got to be honest. I still want congressional investigations every time anything happens in our country. What's Obama Corps of Engineers? What were they doing during this time? Just to satisfy what I want to see is that there was an incompetence or in any way might have made and exacerbated what happened, because our hearts and prayers go out to the people of West Virginia. But having seen what happened a couple years ago in Nashville, Tennessee, I honestly would just like to get some investigations in all the agencies that Obama has had his fingers on for the last 7.5 years. Those are my strong thoughts on this.
No, I understand. I mean, I know the Corps of Engineers maintains locks because even Charleston, West Virginia, the state capital there, which is at some elevation up in the mountains, has barge traffic that leads all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico through locks in the various river networks. But the Corps of Engineers is responsible for their engineering, design, installation, and maintenance, and they can be responsible for how much water is let out of retained spaces, out through the dams. But it's very difficult to control how much comes in when you get 7 inches of rain. A more interesting story to me is the intention 25, 30 years ago of putting a movable dam at the Gulf of Mexico inlet to the Gulf of Pontchartrain near Louisiana, near New Orleans, Louisiana. It was intended to go in specifically to prevent flooding in the area due to storm surges from hurricanes, and it would have worked if it was in place and saved all that suffering and property damage in New Orleans from Hurricane Katrina. However, there were environmentalist groups, quote-unquote, who sued because they felt that this dam that would only be put in place because it was movable once or twice in 10 years, in the unusual circumstance of a major hurricane and storm surge coming, they opposed it for reasons of quote-unquote environmental damage, and they end up tying it up in courts, and it ended up not going in. And that's an interesting discussion to have, and the mainstream media buried that story very quickly.
Boy, they do. And something else I want to bring up too, Fast and Furious happening today. Donald Trump released over the weekend his 50 cases against Hillary Clinton. And I'm looking at the documents, about 35 pages. Fact number 33. Clinton's State Department approved the transfer of 20% of America's uranium holdings to Russia, while investors funneled $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. Your comments on that?
Well, that's Clinton business as usual. Those two were mediocre attorneys in the small state of Arkansas, and they now sit on top of $100+ million personal wealth empire. And it's not because they were working double shifts at Burger King. They did it by selling influence. They're part of the generalized looting of America's wealth that takes place in Washington, and too much of that seems to happen at the hands of people from both parties. Hey, J.D., we're going into break. We're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network Studios, WNJC 1360 AM, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Red State Talk Radio, and AM/FM 24/7, theallinden.com. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm joined by J.D. Manier. You stay with us. I'll be back with a commentary just after this break.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the Internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, we're David and Patty Barrickman of Wildflower Ridge Honey, beekeepers for 49 years. I want to tell you about a great survival and a multi-use product called Trail Rations. It is pure honey and a product of the USA. Trail Rations comes in a food-grade 12-ounce, very durable and reusable pouch, ready for immediate use or for long-term storage because honey is the only food that never spoils. Honey is instant energy and goes right straight to your bloodstream. Honey is one of the best all-natural survival foods, natural sweetener right straight from Mother Nature. Honey is also antiviral, fungal, and bacterial. It's your first aid in a pouch. Carry one in your backpack or your bug-out bag. Find us on Facebook, Wildflower Ridge Honey, or call 765-641-9972, 765-641-9972.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
And you really are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I will vouch for that. We're coming to you live from the studios of WNJC 1360 AM, our flagship station in Philadelphia. And you can hear this rebroadcast on our websites at CCRS Network, CCR Show, or at 1 p.m., log on to roarradio.net. At 9 p.m., log on to highplainsdailynews.com. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone anywhere by calling 832-999-1199. JD, it's Monday, and on Mondays I do a commentary in this slot of the first half hour. This one is called...
looking forward to it.
This one is called Indispensables of American Life. Following the attack 2 weeks ago in an Orlando nightclub, we've seen the left wing in America's politics attack the Second Amendment. I spoke in commentaries in the past 2 weeks about the left's odd attraction to draw the wrong conclusions time and again. Their response to national challenges is, again and again, to try to remove the essential liberties of honest Americans. Somehow, in their liberal eyes, restricting the lives of 1,000 in order to prevent the actions of one is a just bargain. Liberals never fail to fail. This explains the growth of so many problems in this country and around the world. Rather than address individual outrages against we the people by liberal hands, I think it's better to explain the essentials of American life. I want to draw the larger lessons, the immutable truths. As Thomas Jefferson wrote in so many years ago in our Declaration of Independence, quote unquote, these truths to be self-evident. What are the indispensables of a free American living an American life? When we understand these foundations and their purposes, we'll know what is worth fighting for and what is worthy of taking a stand on a hill on which we're willing to die in that fight. Freedom. Most of the people who have ever lived on this earth did not know freedom. Age upon age, lived and died at the convenience of someone else. You had no say in your comings and goings. You owned neither pipe nor bowl nor stool on which to sit. You didn't own your present, and you had no prospect of owning your own future. You were either slave without ownership of your own body, or a serf totally bound to service to a lord and master. Millions in the world still live this way within the boundaries of the world of Islam today. No one heartbeat, not one breath is yours. This lifelong servitude is how most of the people existed who ever lived on this earth. There were select others who had a limited ability to make the decisions in their lives. They were the aristocracy and favored friends, cronies, if you will, of ruling families, the king and his court. This small circle kept the others, the commoners, under bondage. Even these small circles held their privilege at the pleasure and by the permission of others in authority over them. All this changed and was cast away in 1776. For the first time, an entire people, an entire nation understood that no man is bound to another. For the first time, an entire people declared that a man's rights were given to each by God at birth, not as a temporary bargain or an expedient negotiation between men sharing power until other men decided otherwise. First of all birthrights is freedom itself. Freedom to live your life as you choose. Freedom to go your own way, to follow your own path. Freedom to pursue your desires, to use the heartbeats in your own life for your own purposes. Freedom to associate with others of whom you choose. Freedom to embrace faith in a divine creator and make choices by your own conscience. Freedom to succeed. Freedom to fail. Freedom to be wise or foolish. Freedom to be fruitful or indolent, hardworking or lazy. Freedom to live and die in a world you want by your choices and built by your efforts. Freedom to speak to others about matters important to you, and freedom to disagree. Freedom to be bound to no man and to bind no man to you. This statement of self-evident fact in 1776 was revolutionary. It meant that government could only rule by the consent of the people. It was the authority of the government that was to be held in check, not the freedom of the people living their lives under their own authority. This revolutionary understanding upended the world as it was and changed the future course of world history. The peace that is shared widely and in common in our communities is a fruit of freedom. No matter what setback a person experiences, that setback is not permanent. The sun rises tomorrow, and so too rises another set of wiser choices, your choices. With freedom, there is no room for a brooding resentment that a better life can't be found. A better life, however you measure it, is open in the next moment in a world where individual freedom comes first. The freedom to do what you do best, to choose to do with your life as you wish, is the key to individual success and personal prosperity. The personal prosperity and abundance multiplied again and again in the individual lives of an entire nation, creates the abundance of wealth that we see across this land. It provides for the material comforts and the ease of mind that lifts everyone who chooses to take part. This wealth for the common man is the historic evidence that personal freedom is not an academic theory. It is the indispensable basis for human progress, true justice, and lifelong dignity as it has never before existed. This individual freedom is the indispensable thing that makes up life in America. It's the indispensable feature of a free American living an American life. This is a hill worth living on and a hill worth dying on. I'm Kevin Wade, and that's the way I see it. JD? JD, are you still with us?
Beautifully done, Kevin. Apologize, we slipped up on that one. I'm reminded of Obama last week in that entrepreneurial forum out there in Palo Alto. And but he says, you didn't build that. I mean, that's his mantra. And yet you talk so well here in your rant, about the fruit of your freedoms is the wealth of the common man, ownership of your talents and properties. Obama challenges that very, very basic tenet of our country, what our founders so much wanted us to have.
And that's because there are so many gaps in his background that don't seem to be filled with American material. He simply has never understood this country. He has never understood everyday Americans. He hasn't understood the story of this country and our hopes. He's a stranger in a strange land. Strange to him, not strange to us. We happen to love it. This is the United States of America. JD, we're going into a break. We're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360 AM, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Red State Talk Radio, and AM/FM 24/7. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. I'm Kevin Wade. J.D. Manier is in the house. You stay with us. We will be back in, the other side of this break for our first guest.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions.
We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Thank you, Colonel West. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network, and ccrshow.com, or at 1 p.m. log on to roarradio.net, and at 9 p.m. log on to highplainsdailynews.com. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. J.D., are you still with us?
Sure am, Rick. Yes. And
well, it's Kevin. Actually, Rick is not here today. My voice belongs to Kevin Wade. And the reason, J.D., I wanted to get you in sync on the same frequency is you'll enjoy our first guest. He's a mutual friend, and he's been on the show before. In fact, he's been in the studios here at WNJC. Art Harmon served as the legislative director for Congressman Steve Stockman, where he directed legislative priorities, drafted legislation, and advised the congressman on foreign affairs, border security, and other key issues. He has worked in the public policy arena for 3 decades in the nation's capital, is a frequent analyst and commentator on radio and television, and served on the boards of 2 nonprofits. And he studied foreign policy at the Institute of World Politics. He's traveled extensively in the world and returned home each time with a greater appreciation for other cultures, as well as a renewed appreciation for the liberties Americans often take for granted. And you can read his commentaries and articles at redstate.com. With that, Art Harmon, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos.
Oh, thanks so much, Kevin and J.D. It's always a pleasure to be on Conservative Commandos.
Hey, you have a column out where you're reflecting on President Obama's threat to harm U.S.-UK trade relations if they were so bold as to exit the European Union. What's all that about?
Oh, my goodness. It's one of the greatest insults you could do to one of our greatest allies, to threaten them in their elections with destroying trade and by extension, diplomatic recognition if they don't vote the way that he, Obama, in his socialist wisdom, thinks that they should vote. So it was a great insult, and that was the inspiration for the bill, the congressional bill and the resolution that I wrote that's now attracting attention on Capitol Hill.
Very good. Why do you think President Obama decided to take that position? I mean, it's unusual to interfere in another country's domestic discussions.
Well, yeah, it's highly unusual. You know, whenever one of our enemies does something, he very carefully, if it's something against freedom there, like in Iran, he turned his back to the Iranian people in 2009 in June, and refused to support their stand for freedom. And the people held the streets for about a week or 2 weeks, and then the Iranian regime figured America was not supporting them and rolled the tanks. But with our friends, when our friends want to do something that is anti-socialist, then that really burns them up, because, you know, if you looked at his face when he went to Cuba, it was like a kid in a candy store. I'd never seen the guy grinning so much as when he was hugging Castro and walking around on the barren socialist streets of Havana. But here our allies simply wish to revisit EU and say, you know, hey, we're the big power guy trade-wise and have been for 200 years, so you know, it would be no big deal if we go it our way again. But to him, it was a threat there, but it's also directly a threat to everything here. Because why were people voting for Brexit? They didn't want, they wanted to close the borders to more refugees and immigrants and terrorists. They wanted to stop all of these insane regulations that come from the EU. And they wanted to simply have 100% of the laws in England come from Parliament and not 60-some% coming from Brussels with unelected bureaucrats.
It was like an electoral Boston Tea Party.
Amen. You've exactly got it. And he and George Soros and all of their socialist types, they're scared to death that will happen here. That Trump will win and build the wall and tell the globalists time's up, and that this will spread around the world, and and the places that he'll be able to go once he retires from the presidency will be very limited. You know, Iran, North Korea, and Cuba.
No, you used. Art, I always enjoy talking with you on air or off air, and you used a very interesting description. Obama is not bothered because they're speaking in their national interest. He's not bothered because of some political viewpoint they have from a national view. Mm-hmm. He's concerned because the steps taken are working against worldwide socialism.
You got it. EU was, you know, originally it was a coal and steel trading pact to help the recovering economies of Europe trade together, and then it became more of a trading pact. But then when it crossed the line with the formation of the EU to being this overarching socialist nanny state that wants to destroy sovereignty, and Obama would love to see sovereignty in the U.S. destroyed, and Mexican and Iranian police patrolling our streets instead of Americans. So it became this monster socialist thing. At one point, they even had a proposal by the EU. This is just nanny state stuff, but it's illustrative, to forbid selling things by the count. You have to sell them by the weight. So, for example, we pick up a dozen eggs, and there's one price. But no, you would have to weigh each and every individual egg thing. 2-for-1 sales would be forbidden. Little things like that. And so you've got this army of vast EU bureaucrats appointed for life and accountable to nobody, who have nothing better to do than this kind of stuff, or trying to, on the more destructive side, to liberty, trying to destroy freedom and sovereignty and make Europe a just one socialist super state with no elected senior government officials.
And no accountability to the people. Now, there seems to be a disturbance. We have about, first of all, Art, I want to ask you to stay with us through an upcoming break in about 35 seconds, and my co-host, J.D. Manier, will have one or two questions for you after the break. But I'd like you to spend about 30 seconds, if you can, discussing whether or not you think this Brexit fever might spread quickly to other nations in Europe.
Well, it has. It gave an immediate boost in, there's about 5 other countries that where there's growing numbers of people who want to Brexit on their own. France, Netherlands. Basically a lot of the nations that are receiving the brunt of refugees and are facing directly every day, Islamist terrorism or crime, and the smaller countries, unfortunately Germany is so ruled by, globalist Merkel, but even there, there's growing numbers of people, and they're just going to be taking great inspiration from this and saying, hey, we can be friends.
Art, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought, because we've got to go into a break right now, but we'll be back in a couple minutes to pick it up, I promise you.
Right.
Thanks for staying with us. We're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360 AM, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Red State Talk Radio, and AM/FM 24/7, theallendon.com. I'm Kevin Wade. J.D. Manier is with us. Art Harmon is staying with us through the break. You stay with us, too. We'll be right back.
Crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, we're David and Patty Barrickman of Wildflower Ridge Honey, beekeepers for 49 years. I want to tell you about a great survival and a multi-use product called Trail Rations. It is pure honey and a product of the USA. Trail Rations comes in a food-grade 12-ounce, very durable and reusable pouch, ready for immediate use or for long-term storage, because honey is the only food that never spoils. Honey is instant energy and goes right straight to your bloodstream. Honey is one of the best all-natural survival foods, natural sweetener right straight from Mother Nature. Honey is also antiviral, fungal, and bacterial. It's your first aid in a pouch. Carry one in your backpack or your bug-out bag. Find us on Facebook, Wildflower Ridge Honey, or call 765-641-9972, 765-641-9972.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. If you would like a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com. Or at 1 p.m., log on to roarradio.net. At 9 p.m., log on to highplainsdailynews.com. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos for any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Art Harmon stayed with us. He's served as the legislative director for Congressman Steve Stockman for many years. He brings his unique insight about world affairs to our show. And he's been talking about Brexit, the British exit of Great Britain from the European Union. Art, thank you for staying with us.
Oh, thanks again for having me on the show. Always a pleasure.
My co-host, J.D. Manier, J.D. has one or two questions for you. J.D., go ahead.
Hey, Art, I hear this doom and gloom speaking about Brexit, but what about the U.S. and the U.K. compact getting renewed again? Like Reagan and Thatcher, we get a new president in there, get a Donald Trump in there. Can't we make things even better than before?
Oh, of course. And any sort of pro-American president would have been on TV Friday morning saying, we are going to do everything in our power to support the decision of the American people, and I'm dispatching, as we speak, a team of negotiators to sit down in preliminary negotiations with our British counterparts. But it's so ideological with this guy, and I think his hatred of England is so deep, and his support for socialism, that he just cannot do it. And this is why I wrote a bill. I wrote a bill that I've been showing to members of Congress and the media and so forth. And it would force the president, if introduced and passed, to initiate trade negotiations. And then it would use basically the language of the current EU-U.S. Trade agreement for as an interim trade agreement until a new trade pact is done. But amongst friends, it would be easy to come up with a new trade pact. This president doesn't want to, and he will do everything in his power to help George Soros and the other buddies to try to win it back. They're even they're pushing a campaign now to get people to sign a petition in England to say undo Brexit. We need another vote. It needs to be 2/3 or whatever. And I predicted this beforehand, that they would keep having votes until the voters, quote unquote, got it right. It's the same tactic they used in Ireland to get Ireland to join the final act of the European Union in, I think, 2009 or something, where they staged that over a couple of years. They staged 3 votes, and Ireland kept voting against full membership in the EU, or it's called the Lisbon Treaty. They voted once against it, and they said, "Oh, you didn't really mean it. Vote again." And they said, "We don't want to join." And they said, "Okay, good. You've got to vote a 3rd time." So they'll do the same thing in England, and I hope the voters in England will remain resolute.
Art, it reminds me of the same thing in Wisconsin against Scott Walker. The liberals up there kept having vote after vote. But, hey, wasn't the EU going down the tubes anyway? Talk about that. This could have been perfect. I mean, I believe it is perfect for Britain to get out now.
Well, it is. In the very next stage of the loss of sovereignty in the EU is to have a common defense and foreign policy. What that would mean would be if England decided to support the U.S. on, something, peacekeeping or mission to stop some terrible thing happening in the world. But Germany said no, then they wouldn't be able to. So, it'd all have to go through these unelected bureaucrats. So the amount of trade regulation, the amount of other non-trade regulation from the EU is yanking those poor economies down. So you've got countries with almost incurable problems like Greece, where more than half of the people work for the government one way or another, or on the dole, and those countries are being yanked down even further by all the EU laws and regulations. About 60 to 80% of all regulations and laws come from the EU rather than members' parliaments these days. And so England's economy could just soar once they're free of all of this, once they don't have to worry that there's going to be, as I alluded to earlier, laws saying you can't sell eggs by the dozen, but by the pound, absolute idiot stuff. So this is going to save them. It'll also get, the more countries that get out of the EU, probably the better their defense and foreign policy will become. A, it won't be run by a bunch of internationalist socialists, but B, they'll also have a better realization that each country in Europe needs to listen to the lessons of the last century and have proper defense against Russia, against China, against Iran and North Korea. All of the sort of existential enemies of freedom and civilization on this planet. They're building up. Europe's defenses are at all-time lows. Bully for Britain and Brexit, and I hope this is a lesson for the other countries.
There seems to be a move in Italy, driven by this in-migration of people who were not invited in huge numbers to separate from the European Union so they can control their own borders without asking permission from Angela Merkel, so to speak, via Brussels. There's a move in France, much for the same reason, that they've lost their sovereignty and control over their nation and control over the lives of individual Frenchmen. I think it plays out.
Remember the terrorist attacks in Paris and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, the European Union did not stop any of those terrorist attacks. The most recently stopped terrorist attack was by 3 Americans and 1 Brit who were taking a train from Brussels to Paris. When they reacted appropriately and took down a terrorist who thought he was going to go to Muslim heaven by slaughtering people on a train, but he ran into a couple servicemen and a middle-aged Englishman who had enough. So the EU isn't stopping these terrorist attacks. People are.
Your point is exactly spot on, because it is the EU that created the open borders that allowed the terrorism. So you could directly place on the EU leadership and policy for the last 20, 30 years on the fact that there are the no-go zones in most European capitals, and all of the terrorism that is happening there and spreading to us as well.
And I think socialism thrives in an environment that is far removed from the will of the people. You don't find socialists getting much traction in a small town's town council, because what they propose just doesn't find any basis in common sense or affordability. But the more you can distance it from the common sense and life experiences of people at the local community, the more distance you can put in, the more likely you are to be able to hide and camouflage what your real ambitions are, as you put a permanent kind of tap into the nation's treasury. And in Europe, not only do you have the distance between the people and the parliament, but now you did have prior to Brexit that additional distance to Brussels, where you had people who were supposedly elected, but in essence worked in a very detached attitude in relation to the concerns of people in the commons in the small towns and villages.
No, true. The members of the European Parliament, MEPs, they call them, have a lot less power and influence than do members of Parliament of the individual countries. And there was a video that I got of a reporter asking the then newly appointed president of Europe, this guy Herman Van Rompuy, a real socialist, Soros type, asking him, isn't it wrong for democratic Europe to have a president that is selected with in ways that are less transparent than China? Huh. That's exactly it. It is becoming China, with appointed leaders and no dissent allowed.
But Art, not in Great Britain. They've turned the corner, and I hope they stay on this good path. Quickly, because we're down to our last 15 seconds, how can our listeners stay current with your writings and your good work?
Yeah, I publish on Red State and a few other selected places. You just go to redstate.com and look up Art Harman, ARTHARMAN. And you'll see some of my writings, including the Brexit. There's a copy of the Brexit resolution that I wrote, which is getting a lot of attention in Congress.
Art, thank you so much for being with us today.
Always look forward to it and enjoy it, and we'll do it again soon.
Thank you. God bless. We are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360 AM. Our flagship station here in Philadelphia and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Red State Talk Radio, and AM/FM 24/7. I'm Kevin Wade. J.D. Manier's in the house. You stay with us. We will be right back.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, The Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions.
We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, conservativecommandosradionetwork.com and ccrn.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com, or at 1 p.m., log on to roarradio.net, and at 9 p.m., log on to highplainsdailynews.com. And, of course, you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. I am Kevin Wade. It is Monday, the last Monday in June. My co-host today, J.D. Manier, is with us. And, J.D., would you please have the honor of making the introduction and lead the interview with our next guest?
Well, Frank Vernusio serves as editor-in-chief of the New York Analysis of Policy and Government, providing objective coverage of key issues facing the United States today. He's the co-host also of the Vernusio-Novak Report, nationally heard each Thursday at 10 a.m., both on broadcast radio and the web at amfm247.com, and on Saturdays at 1 p.m. as part of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network here on WNJC. He also co-hosts the American Political Zone, broadcast on cable in Eastern Connecticut. Welcome back, Frank, Conservative Commander Radio Show.
J.D., Kevin, it's great to be with you both.
Hey, this is exciting. The report by John Brennan, director of the Central Intelligence Agency on ISIS. Hey, it did not comport with what Obama has been saying. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it does look as though the Obama administration is going to have some problems with this. The fact of the matter is that we are increasingly endangered, that many of the leaders of the terrorist movement are openly admitting that they're using refugees as a way of smuggling people into the West, whether it's in Europe or the United States. And that, of course, brings to question the entire logic of the administration's refugee policy. Remember, the administration is talking about bringing in the next year, I believe or so, about 10,000 Syrian refugees. And interestingly enough, of those 10,000, almost none are Christian. I think it's 0.01%. Now, of all the folks who are most oppressed in the Middle East, it's Christians, Yazdis, and Kurds. And yet almost all the folks the Obama administration is bringing in, only less than 1% are Christian, Yazdis, or Kurds. So it really calls into question the entire logic of the administration's policy.
Hey, give us a kind of a highlight on this report, because it's very telling, very compelling.
Well, of course, this is the report of the president's own CIA. I mean, it's not a hostile organization. It's not House Republicans or anything like that. And the report summarizes saying that ISIS has the ability to strike now at global targets. It's expanding its efforts to produce more assaults such as those we saw in San Francisco, Paris, and most recently in Orlando. They're using refugees, and the turmoil in places like Egypt and Libya has opened the door for ISIS to dramatically expand and enrich itself. Now, why is that so important? Because both in Egypt and Libya, this White House, this administration actually encouraged the events there that took power away from governments that were fighting terrorists and put it in the hands of people who were themselves terrorists. We've seen in Egypt where Mubarak, who had been pro-Western, was enthusiastically kicked out of power with the blessing of the United States, and replaced by Mohammed Morsi, who, of course, is literally part of the Muslim Brotherhood. We saw in Libya where Muammar Gaddafi, who despite his horrible, horrible past, had renounced his nuclear program and was basically on the same side as the West in knocking out ISIS, was kicked out of power. Again, no explanation from the United States, from the administration, why we did this. And now Libya, along with Egypt, is becoming a playground where ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Muslim Brotherhood can dramatically expand.
Well, hey, what about, I want to go back to this, because you said 1% of the Yazidis, Christians, and Kurds, but now we have 10,000 Syrian refugees, according to Obama. Okay, now multiply that by 550%, because those are Hillary's desires, and what kind of disaster are we looking at?
Yeah, if someone in the midst of World War II had said, let's let as many Germans and let's get a big percentage of Germans and Japanese refugees into the United States, I mean, you would have been considered absolutely crazy. This has nothing to do with the Muslim religion. It has nothing to do with any kind of ethnic bias. It's simply saying these are regions of the world and a people who basically consider themselves at war with the United States. Why are we letting them into the country in significant numbers? Now, again, we're not saying that every refugee is going to be a problem. But certainly, by the words of the terrorists themselves, they are using this effort to smuggle people into Europe and into the United States who will commit attacks like we've seen in San Bernardino, Orlando, and certainly in other places as well, certainly throughout Europe, Paris, and so forth. Why are we doing this? There doesn't seem to be any logic into it. Now, there is also a growing belief among folks both in the United States and Europe that considering how expensive it is to help finance these folks getting over here and helping them live in the United States, that money would be much better spent getting safe zones together in the Middle East where these people can live in relative safety within their own homelands, or certainly within their own geographical region. It doesn't make a lot of sense why these folks are being brought over. But I'm going to advance a proposition as to why the administration has been so enthusiastic and has been so intent on doing this on a rapid basis. And you have to combine it with the administration's policy on allowing illegal immigrants to come into the United States. The fact is, as we've seen in numerous cases, illegal immigrants are voting illegally. And based on precedent, folks who come into the country illegally or from parts of the world such as the Middle East, certainly for at least the first generation or two, consistently vote for hard left Democrat candidates. This is a Democrat survival bid, which is why the administration is pursuing it despite all the political turmoil and despite all the danger to the American public.
Why does the president and his supporters insist on blaming incidents that occurred in San Bernardino, Orlando, Fort Hood? He calls it the lone wolf, hate crime, and gun ownership. Those are the problems. It's totally obfuscating the real problem. Talk about that.
Well, the reason for that, I think, is unfortunately clear. The fact is, to admit that these are indeed acts of terrorism would simply make the Obama policy look as ridiculous as indeed it has been. Let's go back to the Fort Hood incident, where the shooting on an American military base by Major Hassan was called workplace violence, despite the fact that Major Hassan had been clearly and obviously and self-admittedly radicalized. The administration can't bring itself, or won't bring itself, to admit that its policy towards the Middle East has been an utter and complete disaster. Recall, right after the Gulf War, whatever one thought of the war to knock out Saddam Hussein, whether you were in favor of it or not, American troops stationed in Iraq after that war were providing a stabilizing influence. The Middle East, indeed, had never had a better opportunity to move away from terrorism and sectarian violence and towards a democracy. Do you remember, J.D. and Kevin, those wonderful pictures of Iraqis holding up a purple thumb, which indicated that they had voted? It was the first time they had voted in a really fair election. We talked about how, despite continuing sectarian dissent, Iraq was going to be moving towards a more stable democracy. All of that progress was completely destroyed when President Obama prematurely withdrew American forces from Iraq. That created a vacuum which allowed ISIS to move in and become the strongest terrorist force ever seen in history. For the Obama administration to admit its errors would, I think, be devastating to them, would be the end of both they and those who support them, certainly be the end of Hillary Clinton's candidacy, and they obviously will not bring themselves to do that.
Frank, we're coming up against a hard break. Can you hold that thought? And we'll do some commercials and come right back with you.
That would be great.
This is JD and Kevin Wade. We're coming to you live from the Concerted Commando's Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Red State Talk Radio, and AM/FM 24/7.
They say I'm crazy, I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the Internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, we're David and Patty Barrickman of Wildflower Ridge Honey, beekeepers for 49 years. I want to tell you about a great survival and a multi-use product called Trail Rations. It is pure honey and a product of the USA. Trail Rations comes in a food-grade 12-ounce, very durable and reusable pouch, ready for immediate use or for long-term storage, because honey is the only food that never spoils. Honey is instant energy and goes right straight to your bloodstream. Honey is one of the best all-natural survival foods, natural sweetener right straight from Mother Nature. Honey is also antiviral, fungal, and bacterial. It's your first aid in a pouch. Carry one in your backpack or your bug-out bag. Find us on Facebook, Wildflower Ridge Honey, or call 765-641-9972, 765-641-9972.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, www.ccrsnetwork.com. www.ccrshow.com, or at 1 p.m. log on to www.roarradio.net, and at 9 p.m. in the evening log on to highplainsdailynews.com. Now you can listen to Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Our guest is Frank Vernuccio, and we are talking about the CIA report on ISIS. Welcome back, Frank.
Great to be with you both.
Dr. Sebastian Gorka, he teaches at the Marine Corps University, and he's been getting quite a bit of notoriety because he has a 3-step program that easily will defeat ISIS. And he's making a lot of news on Fox and other places around the country. But number one, it's simply identify the enemy. Talk about that one, because this administration refuses to say that it's Islamic terrorism.
You know, of all the things that are rather bizarre about the Obama administration, the refusal to even use the phrase Islamic terrorism unless pressed to the wall is perhaps one of the most bizarre. The president continues to cast this in somehow as it's offensive to actually identify the enemy, saying that insulting any Islam extremist is the same as insulting all Islamic people completely. And of course, anybody looking at this clearly simply doesn't agree with that whatsoever. But it's seen in the reluctance of the administration to actually act upon the threat that's present. Isn't it amazing, after each attack during the Obama administration, the number is large and growing, the administration's response is not to engage in more military action against ISIS, not to tighten border controls against those who are coming into the country either through a refugee program, which the administration itself has to admit can't be used to completely vet those coming in, but instead attacks the constitutional rights of Americans. At no other point in our history was an attack on the United States followed by attacks on Republicans by the White House or by the other party on the part of the White House, or by saying Americans have too many rights. Certainly in the annals of U.S. history, there is no more bizarre speech ever given by an American president than that which President Obama gave after the San Bernardino attack, when he said the problem, essentially, was that Americans had too many guns, that Americans had too much of an ability to protect themselves. Now, the anti-gun lobby goes crazy when people say this, but let's question something really important. If just one person in San Bernardino or in that nightclub in Orlando had a weapon to defend themselves with, how different might the results have been?
Oh, amen to that one. But he keeps insisting that this lack of job opportunities and global warming, climate change is causing this. What say you?
Well, I mean, we could go into a whole tangent. If you talk about global change for just a second. According to historical records, tree ring records and so forth, and all the other stuff that geologists can do, it was warmer during the days of the Roman Empire than it is today. And it also was apparently warmer during the 10th century, during the Norman invasion of England. Now, last time I checked, neither the Roman emperors nor the Norman conquest had a lot of factories that were polluting things around the planet. Earth has gone through cyclical periods of warming and cooling throughout its history. But the response of this administration to what they claim is global warming, and certainly a lot of the temperature statistics don't even bear that out, has been to slap socialist-type solutions on the economy. You really have to come to the conclusion that this is not about the environment. It's about an excuse to impose the types of economic policies that the Obama administration wanted to impose on the country in the first place, but didn't have the support of the public to do.
Frank, you're absolutely sure there was no internal combustion engines on those Roman chariots?
I've watched Ben-Hur over and over again, and I've yet to see any exhaust pipe on the chariots.
Back to what's happening here, not calling the enemy radical Islam, that undermines, according to Sebastian Gorka, our allies in the Muslim world, because they can't work with us without identifying the enemy.
Yeah, that's a perfect point, because the fact is, whether intentionally or not, what the president is doing, contrary to what his stated intention is actually alienating those folks who are honestly against terrorists. But you have to start asking some really serious and really, really uncomfortable questions, such as, why is it that this administration has always seemed to side more on the part of the extremists than on the part of the moderates? And again, we go back to the Egyptian example. Mubarak was a friend of the West. He was for peace with Israel. And yet the Obama administration enthusiastically supported deposing him in favor of a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Again, you have to ask why. Let's look at the entire Arab Spring movement. The Arab Spring movement basically allowed the Muslim Brotherhood and other extremist groups to gain more influence throughout the Muslim world. But the only part of the Arab Spring movement that the president did not support was the Green Revolution in Iran, which was the only part of the Arab Spring movement which would have brought a more moderate element into power rather than a more radical element into power. Again, these are really uncomfortable questions, But we know that this administration simply decides it doesn't have to answer questions like that.
Frank, what about these security experts? And they're scrubbing all the religious references to Islam and jihad from government training manuals. Now, our friend Claire Lopez has talked about that, but that is part of the problem. It's a huge problem when we don't identify the truth.
Yeah, you look at all of these actions and you put them together, and clearly the administration has consistently used its power to prevent the public from having an unvarnished look at what actually the threats are and exactly who the threat comes from. We can all disagree on policy, and that's fine. That's what we do. We're Americans. But we all are entitled to the truth. And when the administration says, for example, as Neil Eggleston, senior counsel to the president, said today in response to a request from the Select Committee on Benghazi, that to merely ask the President of the United States to answer questions about his Middle Eastern actions is a violation of the separation of powers. When you have that type of attitude on the part of the White House and absolutely no screaming and yelling about that ridiculous statement by the press, except for great shows like the conservative Commandos, then you begin to see the extreme extent of the challenge that we are facing at this point in our country.
And what about the millions of dollars every day ISIS is able to suck up through even now taxation, but oil? Donald Trump has said there's the key. Take away their finances and you're going to destroy ISIS. Talk about that.
Well, the president has been extremely reluctant to use the economic power of America's vast reserves in any kind of meaningful way, either fighting against ISIS or even in deterring Russian aggression in the Ukraine. In the wake of the Russian move against the Ukraine, Russia basically is financed almost entirely through its natural resources, through its oil and natural gas. Now, the president had the opportunity to strip Russia of its funding for this vast defense buildup it has been going under by simply making a comment that he would open up federal lands to energy exploitation. Now, obviously, those assets would not go online for a couple of years, but the very fact of the president opening up the lands to such development would have caused the price of raw material, or the price of natural gas and the price of oil to plummet, which, by the way, wouldn't have been bad for the American economy either. I would like to go to the gas pump and pay less prices. But the president failed to do that. You have to begin to see a pattern where almost all of the president's actions seem to benefit our enemies and go to the detriment of our allies and of ourselves as well.
Frank, we only have about a minute left, but how can our listeners contact you, gain more information, what you have to say? You have a website? Can you give us some information?
We sure do, and really, thanks for asking. It's usagovpolicy.com.
That's excellent. Well, God
and, of
bless
course,
you.
tune into our show, 1 o'clock, every Saturday on the Conservative Commandos.
Yes, important. With breaking news and all the best in conservative political thought from Frank. And we thank you again, Frank. We got to run.
JD, Kevin, great being with you. I look forward to our next discussion.
Scott, great to have you, Frank.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
We are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360 AM, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Red State Talk Radio, and AM, FM 24/7, theallinin.com. I'm Kevin Wade. J.D. Manier is with me. Thanks for being with us. We have a break, then we're going to go to our last great guest. You'll enjoy that discussion. And stay with us. We'll be right back.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, The Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions.
We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine. You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com. Or at 1 p.m., log on to www.roarradio.net. At 9 p.m., log on to highplainsdailynews.com. And now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. I'm Kevin Wade. It's Monday. And J.D. Manier, the patriot of the Hoosier State, is with me. J.D., we've had a great show so far.
Well, these guests have been awesome, and I loved your rant. Just talking about basics, about our country, the constitutional foundations of it, and why it's deteriorating under Obama.
Yeah, we tend to swat flies, or actually sometimes they're elephants, presented to us as problems from the left, and we forget who we are, what we actually stand for, and why it is important to defend those things. And that's the big stuff in life, not the small stuff. He's thrown out the Obama administration and Democrats, because they have no real success to stand on for Hillary's election, have thrown out in the last year all kinds of distractions, from odd sexual behaviors and identities to strange things about the environment to unusual relations with people around the world who mean us harm. That's all out there as distractions, and we lose sight of our core principles and what is the strategic goal, and that's to pass a great country in peace and prosperity down to our children. We're not going to be able to do that with liberals. We can never do that with liberals because they don't want this country to be passed down as we knew it. But in any event, we can talk about that next Monday, J.D. For now, on the phone with us is Kevin Fobbs. He began writing professionally in 1975. He's been published in the New York Times, has written in the Detroit News, Michigan Chronicle, GOP USA, Soul Source, and Writer's Digest magazines, as well as the Ann Arbor and Cleveland Examiner, Free Patriot, and many others. Former daily host of the Kevin Fobbs Show and conservative news talk, WDDK, 1400 AM in Detroit. And he's a published author. Many Christian children's book, Is There a Lion in My Kitchen, and others. And with that, Kevin Fobbs, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Glad to be with you.
You have an article recently that I'd like you to discuss for our audience. I believe the title is How to Help Your Child Overcome Fear of Terrorism.
Right. And this is something that most parents in America probably never even think about, but they see their children victimized by terrorism, or at least the visions of terrorism, the discussion of terrorism, be it on television, or they can see it on their phone, or they can see it on their computer, tablet, whatever. And it's difficult for parents sometimes to understand what should they be doing when their children are exposed to images of terrorism, because the first thing that most kids, depending, going from the very young to older children or even teens, is, can this happen to me? And number two, if it does happen, what should we be doing? How should I react? And equally important, can this happen to someone I love? For example, their family members who are away, or friends, or whatever. And I think that it's important for parents to take a deep breath and just look at some of the tips that they should be considering, not just for their children, but also for themselves, because parents are also impacted by terrorism, and they themselves may be reacting or not even being aware of how they're reacting to terrorist activities or actions, and how that reflects in terms of their children. So what I did is and I've witnessed several times when we have these terrorist attacks, because I think really important for children and parents to be prepared for this, and also how they can survive it and come out on the other side stronger and more aware of what they should be doing when terrorism occurs in America.
Should you explain to them that it's a real part of life, but there's things we do to protect ourselves? Do you explain it as it's something that happens someplace else and there will be no harm to our family and our community? How do you give it a sense of proportion?
Well, what I do is I first explain that the reality of television is that you can a terrorist attack can be in Paris, but for a child it could be next door because they have no sense of location. So for them, a terrorist attack that's even in Orlando, as we saw what happened a couple of weeks ago, for them it's in their neighborhood because, again, geography doesn't really mean anything to them. So for them, the fear is real, and the insecurity is real as well. What I ask parents to do is, number one, begin to look at the reactions, identify the reactions that their children are having, and not really trying to shut it down, because that's the worst thing that I think a parent can do, is to say that they should be, or act as if it's more important to marginalize what they're feeling or keep it inside. I think it's very, very important for children to begin to come to grips with what's happening, what they're seeing, what they're viewing, what they're feeling, and also it's important for the parents to be able to take it seriously, and because it can have long-lasting repercussions, not just in the week or the month of the year, but as they grow up and become teens and of course, become adults.
Is there any indication that children have been affected by the reality that's talked about in the news about the continuing terrorist attacks around the world? I mean, have been American kids.
Yeah,
I'm certain.
There are a couple of things that they can see that are pretty clear. One, when their children begin to act out, they begin to exhibit antisocial behavior, or sometimes they can just close themselves up and actually stay away from their family members. Sometimes they will actually begin to cut themselves, because we've seen that happen, especially in the high school and junior high kids when they react to traumatic situations or occurrences. Well, those are the kind of things. Or even if they begin to, we call it talk back, when we were raising our kids, but talk back or begin to throw things around, or anything that's antisocial, anything that is outside the norm, because I think that's really, instead of saying stop doing it, ask the child why, what's on your mind. And I also think it's important when you see those kinds of behaviors to actually begin to write it down. I'm a big fan of taking notes, because I'm a journalist, but also because I think it's important to begin to look at what a child is going through, but write it down so that they can see that you're taking it very, very seriously. I'm not saying take meticulous notes. I'm talking about bullet points. Those are the kind of things. But the other thing, too, in order to protect your child, is to actually cut down on the media exposure to what's being seen. Because, for example, in Orlando or Paris or San Bernardino or whatever, if you keep it on all the time, you're re-exposing and that child over and over and over again to the terrorist attack, and they're reliving it too. And especially if there have been children that have been harmed, or especially if it's in a movie theater, because they all they know that they go to movie theaters as well, or buildings or schools or whatever. So it's important to reduce the exposure to that media coverage. That's very, very important. Control some of the things that they may associate with what happened. For example, loud noises, sudden noises that are especially troubling for children when they, again, will believe that even though it didn't affect them directly, that somehow that's an indication that there's a terror event that's occurring and they may be harmed by it or their family members may be harmed by it.
Kevin, we're coming into a commercial break. Would you stay with us on the other side? Because I think my co-host, J.D. Manier, may have one or two questions for you when we come back.
Sure, no problem.
We're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360 AM, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Red State Talk Radio, and AM, FM 24/7, thealllondon.com. My name ends in Wade. I'm Kevin Wade. J.D. Manier is with us today, and our final guest for the first day of the week is Kevin Fobbs. He's staying with us. You stay with us, too. We will be back in 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the Internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, we're David and Patty Barrickman of Wildflower Ridge Honey, beekeepers for 49 years. I want to tell you about a great survival and a multi-use product called Trail Rations. It is pure honey and a product of the USA. Trail Rations comes in a food-grade 12-ounce, very durable and reusable pouch, ready for immediate use or for long-term storage because honey is the only food that never spoils. Honey is instant energy and goes right straight to your bloodstream. Honey is one of the best all-natural survival foods, natural sweetener right straight from Mother Nature. Honey is also antiviral, fungal, and bacterial. It's your first aid in a pouch. Carry one in your backpack or your bug-out bag. Find us on Facebook, Wildflower Ridge Honey, or call 765-641-9972, 765-641-9972.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our websites at CCRS Network and CCRShow.com, or 1 p.m. log on to roarradio.net. At 9 p.m. log on to highplainsdailynews.com. Now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. I'm Kevin Wade. J.D. Manier is with us. It's Monday. He's co-hosting, sharing the studio microphone, so to speak, and Kevin Fobbs is on the phone. J.D. Manier, would you please pick up the interview?
Kevin, I was thinking about something happened recently in Indianapolis. As a late teenager, we had a young man join ISIL, and just about a week or two ago, the authorities picked him up. He was trying to get on a bus, and he wanted to fly out, I think, to Turkey and into Syria, and they apprehended him. Talk about the idea of I'm probably talking about older kids, but identifying terrorists, because what we heard in Indianapolis is this young man, he would play basketball and soccer with the kids, and he wanted to get them to join ISIL, but the kids really didn't take that to their parents very well and tell the true story.
Right. Well, I think that's one important point that parents, especially, and young people, when we talk about young people, I'm saying young people as old as 12 or as young as 12 too, that it's important that they identify when they are exposed to those kinds of radicalized or in being radicalized young people, that they talk with their parents. Because I think oftentimes kids, when they are being exposed to the mainstream media, and they see it just like we see it too, that if you talk about Islam, especially the extreme Islam, that somehow you are Islamophobic or that you are racist, and that's ridiculous because Islam's not a race. But that's beside the point. The point is that they have to be able to be they talk with their parents, have the opportunity to share their concerns with their parents, and their parents must have a conversation with their kids too, that don't be fearful, and that maybe perhaps the parent and the child should talk not just with the local authority, but the school as well, the principal, assistant principal, because I think it's important that if these parents are not comfortable and they show that discomfort, their children will also see that discomfort and shut up and not expose a possible radicalized young person who could go ahead and do some very heinous thing, either in Turkey or, yet equally important, in their own neighborhood, in their own city.
I was reading, Kevin, some of the stuff you offered. I like that idea of having a family emergency response plan. Talk about that a little bit, please.
Oh, yeah, that is so crucial because most people, when you think about emergency plans for, it'll never happen to me. That's typically what will be the response when you talk with them. I'll talk with hundreds of families over the last 15, 20 years about this. And the reality is, they never think about it because what? It can't happen to them. It's important. It's important, especially in an emergency, especially when you have a possible or likely terrorist attack. It can happen anywhere, that you understand, that your child understands what must be done when that occurs. And one of the best things I think that parents can do is have an emergency evacuation plan for their kids wherever they might be it for the school, be it if they're in public, if they're in the park. They should have emergency numbers. Most kids have a cell phone, so that cell phone should have their parents' phone number on it, a neighbor's phone number on it, and especially be able to contact 911 or the police or whatever in that area. It's important. They should practice this as well, because if they don't, most people, when there's an emergency, and especially if there's a terrorist attack in their area, they will not react logically. They will react emotionally. You want to take the emotion out of this as a parent and as a family, and know if you are separated, where to go, who to contact, and most importantly, to not panic. That's very, very important that they understand that children understand do not panic, and that the parents understand that they should not panic, and they have to practice this.
My last comment, and for you to pick up on, is how important is it for prayer and devotion, bedtime, to reassure these kids God's still in control?
Oh, that is number one in my book, because when you think about fear for children comes at nighttime when they are getting ready to go to sleep and they cannot go to sleep. And parents have to be able to share with them that there's a loving God, that Christ is with them, and that's important for them. That they all share this and bring that, because it promotes comfort and it gives them relief as well, so that they understand that God is with them, the parents are with them, they're protected, God protects you, and Christ is with you. And I think when parents do that, it takes away a lot of the stress that children feel at nighttime when they're getting ready for bed. So that prayer is one of the best solutions that parents can ever utilize to helping their children to have comfort and relief, especially in times of terror. It's important, and that's something they should be doing every day anyway, because it's essential, but especially when they are terrorized and stressed by what they feel, the kind of things that could happen to them, and they have this restless, interrupted sleep. And this is the solution. This is the best solution.
Kevin Fobbs, let's go off in a slightly different direction. Talk to us about your children's books.
Well, my first one was written, or actually was devised by my 2-year-old, at that time 2-year-old grandson, and I waited a few years to work on it, and finally got it out, and now we have a series of other books that are with our publisher as well, and it's called basically. Is there a line in my kitchen? But it's about how children can learn to be responsible by using God, by using biblical principles. And we have a lion and a young child, and this lion teaches the lessons of the Bible, but does it in a fun way. And I think that's what we try to do. And I know that our oldest grandson, that was his idea, and he's actually writing his own book series too right now. So this was the first thing that came to his mind as a 2-year-old. So that children have to have God in their life, and that they should be able to use that as a learning experience. And this is a 2-year-old. I know it sounds kind of fantastic, but young children have the closest and most open mind to God, and he just happened to be blessed with that. And I shared his vision and his story, and now we have other stories coming out, and he has his own book series that he's working on as well at 9. He's 9 years old now.
The seeds you planted are bearing good fruit.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Kevin Fobbs, thank you so much for being with us today on the Conservative Commandos Radio Network.
It's been my honor. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
JD, we've got about 2 minutes. It's always great to work the show with you. I hope you have enjoyed our guests as much as I have.
Well, I have. It's been an excellent show again, and we thank Art Harmon, and came on, and tremendous man, and I hope that legislation gets up there and passes. But at least he's ringing the bells of the people up there in Washington. And Frank Bernocchio, we talked about the CIA report on ISIS, and of course Kevin Fobbs here just now talking about what we can do to assuage the fears of our kids and how to prepare them for a world of terrorism here in the United States. And with that, Kevin, I just want to thank you and let you close us out.
Well, I want to thank I want to thank all of our listeners. We wouldn't do this show except for you. This is an outlet to kind of balance out what you get from the biased left. We do our best to bring you the best guests talking about topical issues every single day. And I won't be here tomorrow, but the show will be between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, WNJC 1360 AM, and around the world on the Internet, at all those places I mentioned so often during the show. Please tune in. In the meantime, God bless, Godspeed, and may God save the United States of America.
This is 1360 AM WNJC, Washington Township, Philadelphia's Renaissance radio station. Brought to you by Forsyth Broadcasting. Listen online at 1360radio.com.